Drug cartels aren't just criminal gangs anymore. They are officially enemies of the state, treated exactly like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. It's probably the most radical shift in U.S. national security policy we've seen in decades. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to cut through the noise and really analyze this, well, monumental move by the U.S. government. It's essentially a declaration of war on major transnational cartels.
Yeah, confronting them head on as a national security threat, not just, a local police problem. This whole shift is laid out in Executive Order 14157. It formally labels groups like the Sinaloa Cartel and CJNG, that's the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, as foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs.
And specially designated global terrorists, SDGTs, it's a dual designation. We just haven't seen this level of escalation against these groups before.
And that escalation, our sources stress, is driven by the sheer human cost, right?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the numbers. Over 70,000 Americans are dying annually from synthetic opioid overdoses, mostly fentanyl.
70,000. Yeah, it's a mass casualty event every single year. That loss of life, that scale of destruction, it's the core justification cited for why this requires, well, a war footing, decisive action.
And the most dramatic new tactic, the one really making headlines, is the authorization for the U.S. military to get involved, including lethal strikes.
That's right. Against vessels, for example, suspected of moving huge drug shipments, particularly in the Caribbean. It's a fundamental change in how we approach security in the hemisphere.
And we're already seeing results.
Well, the military confirms this direct action has already cost the cartels nearly $2 billion in lost drug profits. So it's about hitting their operations, yes, but also hitting their bottom line. Hard.
Okay, let's unpack the legal thinking here. Because the immediate question many ask is, how can cartels be terrorists if their main goal seems to be profit, not, political ideology?
That's the critical point, and where the legal ground has been clarified. The designation hinges on Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act. And the key thing is, the law does not actually require a religious or political motive.
Ah, okay. So profit-driven violence isn't automatically excluded.
Exactly. What matters legally is the nature and the scale of the violence and destruction. When the damage reaches this level, the distinction between profit and politics, well, it becomes legally secondary to the threat itself.
So the focus shifts. It's not about their beliefs, it's about the damage they inflict and how they do it.
Precisely. The cartels clearly meet the legal criteria because they engage in what's defined as terrorist activity. We're talking brutal tactics, mass assassinations, kidnappings, huge violent attacks on civilians, on government officials, on infrastructure.
Not just selling drugs.
Not at all. They use systematic terror to operate like quasi-governmental entities or shadow governments in some areas. They control territory.
Plata, plomo thing.
Exactly. Silver or lead. Take the bribe or take a bullet. That systematic terror, it completely undermines the rule of law. And when they control territory, operate with impunity, and fuel a crisis killing tens of thousands of Americans, that is a threat to U.S. national security. It justifies the designation.
Right. So this designation unlocks the power. Sources are calling it the double tap FTO and SDGT. What new powers does this actually give the government? What's the mechanism?
It's this fusion, this dual designation that gives it unprecedented reach. It blends criminal prosecution tools, which come mainly from the FTO side, with powerful financial warfare capabilities from the SDGT designation.
Okay, start with the criminal side, the FTO part.
So under 18 U.S.C. Section 2003-9B, and this is crucial, it's now a serious federal crime to knowingly provide any material support or resources to these designated cartels.
Material support, like what? Is this the same law used against, say, ISIS supporters?
It's the exact same statute used to prosecute people funding groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, yes. And material support is defined very broadly. It could include money, weapons, training, personnel.
Okay, let's make that really practical. Imagine a small business owner in Mexico, or even near the border, who's forced to pay a cartel protection fee just to stay open. Are you saying they could now be committing the same federal felony?
That's the stark legal implication, yes. Paying that extortion money, knowing it's going to a designated FTO, it elevates what might have seemed like a local issue into a potential federal national security crime.
Wow. That means lengthy prison sentences, massive fines.
Exactly. It fundamentally changes the risk calculation for anyone, anywhere, who interacts financially or materially with these groups, even if they feel coerced.
Okay, so that's the FTO criminal stick. What about the SDGT side? the financial warfare.
Right. So the SDGT designation means any property or assets belonging to these cartels that fall under U.S. jurisdiction, bank accounts, real estate, whatever, it's immediately blocked, frozen.
Standard sanction stuff, maybe.
It goes further. The really powerful tool here is secondary sanctions. The U.S. can now target and blacklist foreign individuals or foreign banks, even businesses, that knowingly facilitate significant transactions for these cartels.
So you cut off their access not just in the U.S., but globally.
You try to isolate them completely from the legitimate international financial system, make it toxic for anyone anywhere to do business with them.
And wrapped up in all this is the immigration angle.
Yes, members and even known associates of these designated FTOs are automatically deemed inadmissible to the U.S. and subject to expedited removal if found here.
And then crucially, there's the military connection.
Absolutely. This FTO SDGT designation provides the vital legal foundation, the justification needed to potentially invoke military force under the president's commander-in-chief authority. It frames the conflict in national security terms, opening the door for Title X military operations.
This really is a radical departure then. The military actively involved in what used to be framed more as a war on drugs. How has this shift actually changed operations on the ground? What does this direct action look like?
Well, the key change is what they call operational fusion. It means breaking down the walls between agencies that often worked in silos.
Like DEA, FBI.
Exactly. DEA, FBI, Treasury, Homeland Security, all integrating much more closely with the Department of Defense, specifically U.S. Southern Command, Southcom. They form these unified joint task forces.
And they're not just sharing intel anymore.
No, the strategy described is moving beyond just passive intelligence sharing into active kinetic field operations. That means actively targeting and disrupting or destroying the enemy's operational capacity.
And that's where Title X comes in, the military authority.
Precisely. It means the military can potentially use its unique counterterrorism authorities for direct action missions. Think clandestine special forces operations.
To do what exactly?
The possibilities discussed include things like destroying major fentanyl production labs deep in cartel territory, or even conducting capture missions, snatch and grab operations against high-value cartel leaders, the warlords.
Wow. So like the kind of operations we saw against terrorist leaders in the Middle East or Afghanistan?
That's the parallel being drawn, yes, applying that counterterrorism manhunt model. And the legal basis for using potentially lethal force rests on a specific determination.
Which is?
The administration determined that the U.S. is effectively engaged in a non-international armed conflict with these cartels. That legal framework is what justifies using military force, including lethal force, typically reserved for wartime scenarios.
And we've seen this in action already.
According to reports, yes, especially in the maritime domain. Sources cite at least 4 specific instances where drug-carrying vessels, often semi-submersibles leaving from places like Venezuela, were intercepted and destroyed by military assets.
Destroyed. Resulting
in an estimated 21 deaths among the crews on those vessels. It demonstrates a willingness to use decisive, lethal force.
And the broader impact.
Well, overall, this reported surge in, let's call them counter-narco-terrorism operations, is credited with disrupting 122 metric tons of cocaine alone. And as we mentioned, denying the cartels almost $2 billion in potential profits. The goal seems clear. Immediate, decisive action to hurt them and deter future activity.
Okay, so those are the results of hitting them abroad, hitting their supply lines, hitting their finances. But how does this connect back home? For you, the listener, how does this national security approach translate to our own domestic security, especially the crisis at the southern border?
This is really fundamental. The designation reframes the U.S. southern border itself. It's no longer just an immigration management challenge. It's now viewed explicitly as a front line in the fight against a narco-terrorist threat.
So security measures at the border get a national security justification.
Exactly. Border hardening measures, increased surveillance, potentially different rules of engagement. They can all be justified under a national security rationale because you're defending against a designated enemy force, not just managing migration flows.
And is there evidence this tougher posture is having an effect?
Well, the argument presented is that this firm stance acts as a deterrent. There are reports cited suggesting a decline, specifically in the more sophisticated cartel-coordinated human and drug smuggling attempts across the border. The idea is that increased risk and consequences change cartel calculations.
And this links back to the broader conservative emphasis on enforcing existing laws,
Hmm.
restoring the rule of law.
Precisely. The argument is that faithfully executing existing immigration laws is paramount. When illegal entry by someone linked to a designated cartel FTO can be treated as a terrorism-related security threat, it allows for, swifter removal and potentially more serious consequences. It strengthens the hand of enforcement.
And there's a fiscal argument tied into this as well, I understand.
Yes, that's often highlighted. Critics of what they see as lax enforcement or proposals for mass amnesty point to studies on frequently cited projects that granting amnesty to millions who are formerly unlawful immigrants could create a minimum lifetime fiscal deficit for taxpayers of around $6.3 trillion.
$6.3 trillion.
That's the figure used, yes. So the argument becomes that strict enforcement isn't just about upholding the law or enhancing security, it's also presented as a matter of vital fiscal responsibility for the country, protecting the taxpayer. Hashtag tag outro.
So wrapping this up, the fundamental shift seems complete. Cartels are no longer just criminals. They're being treated as hybrid threats. Part criminal enterprise, part terrorist organization, requiring this hybrid military-grade response, using the full weight of the national security apparatus.
The goal seems to be essentially zero sanctuary, making it clear they can be targeted anywhere, anytime.
And the psychological impact must be significant too.
You'd have to assume so. I mean, think about it. These cartel kingpins who maybe felt untouchable ruling their territories are now officially categorized alongside international terrorists. They know highly skilled U.S. intelligence agents and potentially military operators are actively hunting them. That changes things.
And internationally. Has this designation had ripple effects?
It seems to be promoting alignment. Allies like Canada, for instance, have followed suit, designating the same major Mexican cartels as terrorist entities under their own laws. This helps create more of a unified North American front against the threat. It closes off potential safe havens or operational areas.
Okay, so we've explored how classifying cartels as terrorist unlocks really the full might of the U.S. military force, crippling financial sanctions, intense intelligence operations. Decisive action seems to be the watchword. Now that this precedent has been set, the idea that large-scale mass-casualty organized crime can be legally and operationally treated as terrorism, it raises a big question for the future. What other transnational threats, what other powerful organized criminal groups causing mass harm might the U.S. be justified in confronting with this same very potent counterterrorism blueprint? That's something to really think about as these policies evolve.